And let me just turn on, there we go. You can unmute. So you should be able to hear me now. Okay, so we are on, there we go. Just testing the stream out. Hi, everybody. Okay, so I'm just putting the stream to cross-platform to make sure that everything is all good. And I'm going to go over to putting the stream. There we go. Yay. Okay, so, first thing I need to do is sort out the chat on YouTube. Okay, pop out. Fantastic. So that is now sorted. Everybody can hear me. Can you let me know if you can hear me on YouTube, and also on Facebook? If you can hear, like, just write in the comments below that you can hear me, or give me a thumbs up or something, so I can just do this test. Okay, so we're getting people telling me that you can hear me. Awesome, fantastic. Okay, so if you're on Facebook, you can watch the stream on Facebook in our Raising Vibrations page. Otherwise, we're also on YouTube. So I'm testing something new out at the moment, where I've got two programs sort of streaming to different platforms. So if there are some slight glitches, it's only because I'm just trying to figure it out. I hope to actually do this more often, where I can cross stream. Okay, so let me just refresh that. How is everybody doing? How are you all doing at this point in time? I suspect with this topic of conversation today being Mars and Uranus and the 29-degree mark, that we're all a little bit, frazzled. Lots and lots of energy taking place at the moment that's pulling us in multiple directions, and we're trying to figure out what to do and how to act. Or maybe that's just me. So, like I said, okay, cool. So we've got Facebook stream is working perfectly, and everybody can hear me on YouTube, which is amazing. Okay, then I am a happy camper at the moment, and I suspect everybody else is. So yeah, everybody that wants to, I'm going to be consistently watching the chats in both Facebook and YouTube. So if you've got questions, if you want to talk, please, write in the comments. I will be responding to them. And, we're going to talk about this Mars-Uranus cycle and the nature of what it actually represents to us for the collective. And I love this picture. I love this picture so much on the background, because it really, really represents to me the essence of what Uranus is about, I think that in astrology there needs to be a huge paradigm shift within the context of how we actually understand these archetypes. And it's one of my missions within my own work, and then also working with Jen, that we want to kind of be part of the change in which we use astrology as a form to heal ourselves. Okay. And so this picture at the back over here really begins to open us up to the essence of what Uranus is really about, not just on a level of, detachment or individuality or difference or the rebel. I want to kind of break away from that and work towards more of the quantum essence of what Uranus actually represents and Aquarius represents, amongst other, beautiful things that are associated with this archetype. So on this weekend, so the 16th and 17th of February, right, I'll be having or hosting a free introduction in evolutionary astrology, 2-day course. And my intention with this is to, bring you into the space that I like to use astrology, and to, in essence, inspire you to look at this form of astrology as a way to, become something that you actually integrate into your daily life practice. So this is all for free. So if you, at the end of the stream, go check out in the comments below or in the description, I'll have a link to sign up for that. And that will be taking place on, like I said, on Saturday and Sunday. They're about 2 hours long, an hour to an hour's and a half worth of just me sharing some stuff, teaching about the principles of EA, and then we'll do some, Q&A afterwards as well. So, to really, really kind of open us up to the layers of understanding astrology beyond just personality types, right? This is the kind of key essence here. And this is, again, the point of this picture at the back over here. Like, really, really observe the context of what this picture is representing. Like, for instance, if we take the cursor, look at the circle over here, look at a circle inside of it, and then look at the lines interacting with the different dimensions. This is Uranus. This is what it means to begin opening up to the Uranus, Pluto, and Neptune planetary energies. And the funny thing about it is that even as I use this as a concept to describe these archetypes, I'm still limited in the sense of how we can actually conceptualize and embrace and understand it, because inherently this archetype is still very much outside the field of Saturn, So we have to begin embracing that these multidimensional planets like Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, or if we want to use more subtle or grounded language, just the subtle bodies of our makeup, right? So we have this physical density that we would reflect as Saturn, and then we have these other subtle bodies that exist with us, right? So Uranus would be sitting over there, and it's this very soft, subtle memory field that just is around you. And when you look at Uranus in your chart, I actually think that it's really important to be very, in a sense, humble to what that actually represents for you, and how, as your life continues to unfold, so will the essence of what Uranus and Pluto and Neptune will actually become for you. Meaning that right now I have Uranus in Sagittarius as an example, in terms of generational, right? And I can read on the internet Uranus in Sagittarius means this. And so some of that information will resonate, and then the other amount of it will kind of be more of a descriptive nature based on our very Saturnian linear perception of things. And what I'm trying to point to is that if we embrace Uranus and the outer planets and astrology from a more sort of abstract, creative, imaginative space, and we take a approach that's more about how this picture is representing itself in this very quantifiable, chaotic field of circles and there's no like squares and rectangles. It's very natural and curvy in its nature, Fibonacci sequence type of behavior. Then immediately we can start to embrace that Uranus in itself holds this memory field that on one level, you can have an experience in your life at the age of 10 that reflects a sort of a trauma, right? An inability to process why your parent maybe was being a certain way. Let's say, for instance, Uranus in your 12th house, Uranus in Pisces, and you grow up and you experience certain memories of a parent that struggled with alcohol, for an example, like a dissociative experience. And you get to the age of 30, and all of a sudden you have, say, Mercury transit your Uranus, whether it be square or in opposition, and for 2 or 3 weeks you get exposed to a certain experience that triggers off this memory of a prior moment in your life. And in that present moment, in that space, that memory like pulls you back to that place, but it also at the same time reminds you of the potential to transform or liberate from this experience. It might not be like, you might actually have clarity that, oh, actually now I get it, that at the age of 30, let's say this was mom, right? The parent that you were seeing that was struggling with this was mom. And you now realize that through, maybe a conversation with her later on in life, you realize that maybe she was super stressed. There was a lot of things going on and she didn't have any support around her, and that feeling of hopelessness and her feeling of not being able to have a lot of strength, that's how she kind of disassociated to deal with that pain, right? And you can see how this energy of a planet in a birth chart becomes alive in such a visceral way through realizing and recognizing the humanness within the chart. So you, as an example, or me, when we look at our chart from this humanist perspective, we begin to see this more like different complex exist. And this different complex exist is the soul, it is us, and it's these other dimensions of ourselves that are present. Okay. Now I just want to test something quickly. I'm actually going to, let's see if that works. Oh, there we go. That might be better on one of the cameras. Okay. So what does this got to do with this closing cycle of Mars-Uranus? Well, it has a lot to do with it, because if we're going to try to sit and understand the context of what this square is doing for us at a collective level, but also what it is representing to us at an individual level, then we've got to really start approaching this symbolism from a place that is integrating the human experience in the way that it actually works for us, and not from a more linear sort of place of this is what it is based on descriptions. Okay, so we're going to liberate. That's true, that there is a deep essence of liberation that is absolutely taking place for us here. But the experience of liberation and how that occurs could be completely missed, because we could be missing the actual experience of what that liberation process is about. And that can come in the form of a recognition of certain anger that you might have been holding on to, that with this Uranus-Mars conjunction squaring the nodal axis, and again, we'll go into the chart and I'll explore this at a deeper level, we can actually begin to see that maybe this was a conversation that needed to be had with somebody. And that in that moment of realization, there was a surrender of holding on to the anger because it no longer served its purpose, as an example. And so that's where the potential exists with seeing our astrology charts and the current energies from a place that is, again, not descriptive and very Saturnian and very linear, but more about the expansiveness of what is potentially happening in multidimensional timeframes. Okay. So I hope that that kind of begins to tantalize and satisfy your taste for exploring the deeper essence of what it actually means to be human. And that there is a lot of things that are occurring in our lives that we're processing that, with this type of ability to begin embracing astrology in this way, there is this whole vista that opens up for us in which we can start to make sense of complicated, weird experiences that we've had in our lives that have plagued us through being conscious of it or recognizing the unconsciousness within ourselves as we go, I noticed that I tend to disassociate it a little bit more in this type of experience. And when I observe that experience, I notice that there's an actual correlation between maybe my Mars square Pluto in my chart, as an example, Okay. All right. So I'm just going to go check in with everybody in the YouTube chat, and just going to press refresh it over there. And again, let's have a look. So let's just refresh the chat. So remember, anybody that wants to kind of just ask some questions during chat, or if any got anything to say, I'll be super happy to respond to them. Okay. All right. Okay. So the sun's in Aquarius at the moment, which is a very big indicator to understanding. Let's go have a look over there. I'm going to get that up for us and get that over there. Okay. So the sun is in Aquarius at the moment. It's 22 degrees. And this is an indication of something really, really important. The sun is illuminating the Aquarius archetype. So you can clearly see that there is a very strong sort of association and focus on the planets of Uranus and Mars. Why? Because Uranus as an archetype is associated with Aquarius. The sun is in Aquarius, so the sun is illuminating the Aquarius energy, and we have Mars in Aries in its own sign, and we have Uranus in Aries in the same sign as Mars conjuncted. So there's a repeating theme here. There's a combination of consistent energy pointing out to us saying, hey, focus here, focus here. So the question that I think naturally arises for us is, why is there a focus? And I find this really cool. So you've got Uranus sitting at 29 degrees Aries, and you have Chiron sitting at 29 degrees Pisces. And by the end of March, we're going to have both of these signs enter into Aries, or one of they're going to shift, sorry. So Chiron is going to go into Aries, and Uranus is going to go into Taurus. So we're going to be completing cycles here, 29 degrees. So in 2011, 2012, Uranus entered Aries, and it took 7 years to essentially go through this sign. And now it is reaching this 29 degree mark, and it's reaching this point again. So Uranus has already hit 29 degrees Aries. This happened last year at this time. Okay, and remember, it retrograded towards the end of 2018. It retrograded all the way back into Aries after being in Taurus, and then it stationed and moved direct again. So this is actually the second time that we're having Uranus move over the same point again, right? And what we've got to look at here is the significance of a cycle that ended, then went into a new sign, and then retrograded back into the previous sign, brought us information again from that cycle, and now we're going back into Taurus again, and we're, in essence, we're bringing back to us, we're bringing back to Taurus the finalization of what Uranus in Aries was meaning for us in the last 7 years. Okay, so there's this deep completion cycle, this closing cycle related to this acceleration, Uranus, of our individuation, okay, of our process to break out of certain pre-existing molds and structures, and you can even call it like a fabric of space and time in which we defined ourselves as a human race individually and as a collective. And everybody can see this acceleration take place in the last 7 years. You can see how things have changed for yourself. You can see how with the 7-year cycle that with Uranus being in Aries, we've gone through a lot of stuff that has radically shifted our perception of reality. We, in this case, we're actually using this technology to reach each other at this point. And what I find interesting about this experience is that as Uranus now leaves Aries and it enters Taurus, there's this new cycle awaiting for us to begin taking everything that we essentially worked and experienced during the last 7 years, and we want to kind of integrate it into something, right? We want to integrate it into something that is sustainable. Okay, so the rise of the internet and working on the internet, being able to have that freedom to start a YouTube channel, like for myself, for instance. And through Uranus, through Aries, I was able to establish a sense of self, okay, a sense of self that represents maybe a meaning for me, as an example, right? The capacity to work and do astrology and, talk to clients and share the wisdom of astrology in a space that is the internet. And now with Uranus moving into Taurus, in my personal example, this is an opportunity to begin looking at what can stabilize and begin nourishing this sense of self that has essentially come into play over the last 7 years. And there are many, many examples in different ways that this is happening. And you just have to observe this in your own life. Okay, now this is more of an outer manifestation, right? An outer manifestation of something like this. What happened for me when Uranus entered the third house, as an example, and this obviously I can only share my own personal experience, and of course you can reflect on this for yourself in your own house, in other words, where Uranus was in, what house this was in. What happened for me was there was a huge acceleration within the context of how I defined things intellectually. So during the 7-year cycle, I became aware of a form of astrology called EA that accelerated my relationship to understanding the soul. And in the 7 years of experiencing this, I became really, really aware of how to live in alignment with a certain philosophy or principle or new type of language. That now, as Uranus leaves my third house, and you know, it's actually in my fourth house right now, that as it's into my fourth house, I'm noticing the importance of emotionally connecting. Fourth house, the language that was established and laid out with Uranus transiting my third. So how do I begin integrating the knowledge that accelerated itself in 2000, you know, in the last 7 years into my life? And that is the same message for you. What essentially accelerated for you in the last 7 years that now in this next phase will become a process of integration at a body level, right? How do you feel that experience for yourself? See, because Aries is very much a cardinal sign. So this energy is very much about instinctual change, moving across, establishing, but it doesn't necessarily lead to anything substantial or lead to anything sustainable. Aries is not really about sustainability. That's why Taurus in its next sign is where we begin to recognize the essence of, oh, I've started this company. How is it going to survive? What needs do I have in regards to what is going to sustain this idea? And so that's where this more material, earthy, grounded, practical embodiment process begins to take place. And it's a very slowing down process, you know, especially for me, again, with Uranus transiting through Taurus. During that period of time when Uranus was in Taurus, I took the astrology schools that I'd created, and I actually recorded it and put it into video format that now is essentially available 24/7 all over the world. And it doesn't require me to have to set up meetings and meet people every single Sunday, as an example. And what that does for me is it frees me up to then continue to contribute more while that astrology school is still contributing to everybody that wants to learn astrology and that can do it in their own time, Uranus and Taurus. So this is a practical example of what this next phase is going to bring us relative to the experience of accelerating our sense of, or our new defined sense of self. Okay, so this is a very, very big sort of reflection or pathway of what this Uranus is representing to us. Okay, as it ends it, it's this completion cycle, it's the final phase. How does that feel for us in terms of more of an individual karmic perspective? Okay, so here we have very clearly Uranus is squaring the nodal axis. It's been squaring the nodes so that the south node sits in Capricorn there and the north node sits there in Cancer. And here you have Uranus in Aries. And of course, as the nodes have been moving backwards, so when you look at the nodes, they move backwards across the zodiac. So 25, 24, 23 is how they work. South node will be approaching Pluto, right? So the nodes have been squaring Uranus for, I think, just about 4 months or so, or 3 months. And this is something that's really important for us to recognize, because when I was talking about Uranus being this very subtle memory field that you experience when through shock, for instance, you know, you're on you're having a conversation with somebody and all of a sudden they say something random and it triggers your defensive mechanism within your psyche, right? And they're obviously not doing it on purpose, but what happened was this defense mechanism arose within yourself, and if you explore it, you'll start to notice that maybe there's a kind of emotional complex that needs to be worked through at that in that field. And so Uranus will be that subtle imprint or that subtle sensitivity that when that experience happens brings you back to that time frame. Okay, because that emotion is essentially frozen in this point. Okay, now coming back to what like I said, I was talking about earlier with Uranus being the subtle memory and squaring the nodal axis, it's very clear to me that with the nodes being in Cancer Capricorn, okay, and I'm going to pause there for a second and I'm just going to illuminate a little bit about the nature of Capricorn itself. Capricorn as an archetype in its non-distorted form is a feminine principle. meaning that it is deeply reflective. It is yin energy, so it's receptive in its state. And it is also an archetype that, in essence, actually closes down things for us. It creates a boundary for us to sit within in order to reflect. It's a slowing down archetype. And what the reflection does is it helps us observe the experience of past events. And through this experience of observing and feeling past experiences, we begin to recognize how patterns exist in a linear way. Okay, and what we do is we see the natural unfolding of time. So again, with this picture that I have over here, if we kind of look at the circles over there, they're circles expanding, okay, and they're expanding out of a central force. So there's the center force that exists, and they're expanding in different ways. This is a pure expression of Capricorn, because what you're seeing here is a boundary that is forming in a very feminine process. In other words, it's not like linear and squares, etc., but it's very Fibonacci orientated. It has this circular expression to it. And what it's representing is an unfolding of experiences. And if we had to go backwards, i.e. if we looked at an experience expanding outward like that, we would have the motion of something moving forward. But as it kind of, if you had to reflect backwards, you would notice how the experience goes back to its center. This is Capricorn. It is the process of reflection of time as it is experienced. And this reflects to us the nature of history. Okay? So Capricorn, with Pluto, Saturn, and Venus over there right now, and the South Node, of course, this is reflecting to us an aspect of our history, or something that has come before, or events that have been crystallized in our emotional layering. So again, not to kind of create too many concepts here for us to kind of digest, but I encourage you to watch this video. There's this process of emotions that layer on top of each other. And so Capricorn reflects to us those layerings of those emotions, whether good or bad, or not good or bad, but ones that you felt joyful and your heart was open versus something that felt closing down. All these experiences are held in a history book. And so, Uranus reminds us, or is this subtle memory that exists and allows us to touch this essence of history. Okay. So with Uranus there making a square to the South Node in Capricorn, and with Pluto there and Saturn there, it's reminding us, or it's pointing to, where experiences and the past history, or the past timelines, or the past progression, okay, in our subtle awareness, we are aware of it. And we're aware of it because the essence of this process, with the North Node now part of this whole entire journey, i.e. the experience of progressiveness, it's indicating where we can liberate, so break free, objectify, change the pattern, see it differently, observe it from a different point of view. Like, this whole entire process opens us up to seeing a situation differently relative to what we experienced it in the past. And so it's in this process of Uranus squaring our nodal axis for the last 4 months, have we had given this opportunity to really finally begin to liberate from crystallized structures and paradigms of thinking and behavioral patterns and all the types of things that comes along with what we feel is in our essence not supportive for our new liberated self that has been essentially worked through during 2000, from 2012 up until now. And so you can see that there's a kind of, when we're talking about a closing cycle, okay, when we're talking about a closing cycle, there's an intense acceleration of things that are forced through a tunnel that eventually will be birthed out the other side. So when we go through this Mars conjunct Uranus in Aries at 29-degree experience, the acceleration of things needing to culminate is very intense for us, and our electrical systems can be easily, fried out by the impulses and sort of electrical stimuli that are occurring for us in this multidimensional field of awareness that we are awakening to and becoming more aware of as a byproduct of, this kind of continuous cycle of evolutionary growth that is materializing on the planet for the human race. So it's this very, very beautiful thing of interweaving individual experience at a very sort of small, this moment level, to expanding it to more of this global consciousness level, to eventually expanding it to the point where we actually just see our galaxy interfacing with the galactic center, and that then being part of its own yuga cycle, and us just kind of raising into a higher vibration of light from a more galactic level. It's like the nature of this macro microcosm is so incredibly profound, at least in my vision and my eyes. And it's beautiful to see this progress work. And this tool of astrology can potentially help us translate this interdimensional experience of consciousness in its fluid form of human experience. So looking back at and coming back to the more practical experience of Uranus and Aries at this closing cycle and Mars conjunct it, we have personal planets, right? So we've got a personal planet of Venus and we've got a personal planet of Mars. They're all in cardinal signs, right? So Venus in cardinal sign correlating to this need of reflection, Capricorn, slowing down, reflection, right? And we have Mars in Aries pointing to this need to culminate, this need to culminate, this need to culminate, this need to culminate. So need for culmination, as in closing cycle, acceleration, liberating from previous patterns, and the Venus cycle giving us this opportunity to, in a sense, slow down and be present with what is wanting to be liberated from. And this liberation process, this freeing process, is felt emotionally. Because when we begin to move the emotion within the body structure, we become less sensitive to the need for defense around what that emotion might mean, and we can be more free and fluid in the experience, right? And this is a very, like, for some of us this is very easy, and some of us it can be very difficult depending on the nature of the trauma and so on and so forth, right? So Mars contacting Uranus at this stage is going to be happening tomorrow. The conjunction will be taking place. That's when this intense liberation and new direction will begin to occur for us. And with Mars, just about to conjunct this outer planet. Okay, so let's kind of make this more practical. Mars, it's a personal planet, so our personal sense of desire is going to make a connection to the subtle memory of what it means to be you, and also at a collective level. And we will go through sudden jolts of awakenings that will realizations and, oh yeah, this was amazing, to, maybe releasing some grief, or not really releasing grief, but releasing emotions related to grief around an experience that occurred. And so there are going to be some sudden shocking experiences arrive into your awareness field. And when we talk about an awareness field, think of Saturn, think of Venus, think of Mars, think of Jupiter. This is your awareness field at a physical level. And then the Uranian field just sits outside of that, and that accesses this more deeper soul journey that is held within Pluto and beyond. So there's this interface between subtle impressions existing with Uranus and personal planets Mars, and we all have this contact right now. So what's going on for you right now? And all of it is about is recognizing past patterns, breaking free from them, recognizing past patterns, breaking free from them, and so on and so forth, and just consistently going with this kind of seesaw experience. Okay. Speaking to Chiron moving into Aries, this is going to be what I think a very important role within what the last 7 years was really about, right? So what I've learned in my 7 years of Uranus move through Aries was this intense download around a new type of language that essentially connects the soul. Okay. Uranus moves into Taurus, and it's like, okay, so how do I feel those expressions? How do I feel this language? And Chiron moves into Aries, and all of a sudden I start to notice this groundingness become more present with me in this communication, the healing wisdom that arises naturally. And again, when Uranus hits something in our chart, okay, when Uranus hits something, when Uranus makes contact to something, it accelerates it. But accelerates it so fast that the experience of actually integrating it into your life might not actually be available for you to understand at that point. And so it's always important to recognize that sometimes you will be flooded with certain experiences that will overwhelm you. And it's healthy in this moment to really just kind of breathe into the moments, breathe into these experiences, in like practicing coming back into the body, and like in a sense almost calming the electrical system down as an absolute necessity to help anchor in and embody these awarenesses that are coming into your energy field at such fast rates. So that's why I think with Chiron going into Aries, we're really going to see in the next 7 years the actual effects of what Uranus in Aries was about from 2012 up until now. So we're really going to see it in the next 7 years, because we're really going to see the technological shift take place. We're really going to see the shifts of what it meant to deal with Saturn's transit through Scorpio from 2012 up into 2015, when everybody all of a sudden just woke up and went, oh, there's Illuminati, there's this, there's shadow government. And it was like almost to the point where it became intense hysteria, that there was this, it was very apparent that we were dealing with the shadow of our unresolved authority and parental dynamics that we were projecting into this to the collective, that were bringing us to the space of complete powerlessness. So I think with Uranus, with Chiron moving into Aries, Uranus moving into Taurus, we're really, really going to begin to see the effects of what actions we took, like I said, from 2012 up into 2019, where we are right now. And this chapter is completing for us in a very, very big way. So there's a lot of like cracking open, right? Something breaking open. And with the nodes being in Cancer and Capricorn, there's this potential for softness to materialize for us in the next maybe not 18 months, because the nodes are already there, but let's just say 15 months, right? In the next 15 months, as the nodes move through Cancer Capricorn, there's this potential to open up and crack open, which obviously this is what Uranus and Aries was about, cracking something, opening, so we could see what's inside this pot of repressed emotional stuff that exists there, and all of the other things associated with lifetimes of just masculine patriarchal kind of living, and what that represents to us, and the rise of embodied consciousness as a feminine principle, as an example, and you're going to see that through Uranus, through Aries, it began with the Arab Springs. It began with Occupy Wall Street. All of this type of need to, in an Aries way, open up to where there is repression. And so as Uranus leaves this point and Chiron enters Aries, the potential for us to heal through the realization of our own freedom, and to recognize, especially for Pluto and Libras, because of course Uranus would have been transiting or opposing your Pluto, you'll be recognizing deep unconscious psychological emotional wounds that are held and encapsulated within that Pluto symbol for yourself, so this is a very big key to also recognize this kind of opening up and the softening of the rigidity that has essentially needed to exist, because when we go into the world, there's a lot of pain. There is a lot of pain in the world right now that masks itself as rejection and unacknowledged feelings, and the men that have not been able to fully connect to their feminine essence because their relationship to their mother was broken at that stage, and the father figure was absent, and so therefore authentic expression of sovereignty and adultness in a masculine way is not fully there, and there's just blocks and blocks of displaced emotions all over that, again, like I said, manifests as arguments on Facebook and rejection of other people's opinions, and the list goes on and on and on. So I think we're really, really going to get this opportunity to begin healing this complex that exists within us during this period of time. And I most certainly hope to add my fair share of what I think could possibly be here. Okay. Mercury entering Pisces, let's just touch on this over here. Mercury entering Pisces, this is another just, key integration of the nature of intellectual capacity to access a more intuitive, sensory perception way of relating to life. Mercury in Pisces is very open and sensitive to interdimensional awareness. So that will also give us the opportunity to, during this time, tap into the nature of culmination or closing off or realizations. Neptune is very much associated with the disillusionment of the apparent idea or imagination or the feeling of what it is that you wanted it to be versus the actual reality. So we could actually be having quite a lot of the veil being lifted from our illusions so that we can see clearly in terms of what insights are already trying to flood through for us right now. And of course, at a collective and a consensus level, this could actually be intensely fracturing, where a lot of people won't be able to process this. It's just too much, And then, of course, this beautiful Jupiter Neptune trine, not trine, square that's taking place for us right now. It's a very clear indication of us connecting to something that is more intuitive within ourselves. This is one level of it, this intuitive sense of what is your personal fate or destiny about, and how your own belief systems are influenced and inspired from your imagination. What is your essence of your truth essentially wanting to come through? That is one side of it. And then the other side of it is the dissolving and the eroding of your belief systems that were held in place to protect you from a certain trauma, or belief systems that you needed to believe in, that you told yourself, that essentially kept you from really connecting to your essence because of whatever experiences had happened to you. And again, the subtle memory of Uranus and Aries, as it leaves this, Mars is going to hit this contact. It's like, finally let go, finally let go, finally liberate, finally liberate. Okay. So that's me and chatting about this chart over here. So I'm going to pull my attention now to the chat and to just kind of look at what everybody's been speaking to. So I'm just going to go into Facebook and just refresh that. And I will also move the chat bar to a place where I can actually see everything going on. So did anybody actually, in a sense, get something of what I just shared right now? Okay. So hello, Johanna. Hello, Faris. And there's Daniel. Hi, Raymond and Iris and Violet. And who else we got you? Alexandra, Amy, Melissa, how are you? And Cameron, how you doing, man? Mia, David. Oh, that's pretty cool. Thanks very much, David. I appreciate your super chat contribution. I appreciate that a lot. Thanks very much. And hold on, it's just okay. So I'm just going to move the screen over there so everybody can see me clearly. Hi, Lisa. So thanks very much for joining this the stream, peeps. So let's see. I'm going to start and just kind of go through some questions. Natal Uranus, Isa, you've got natal Uranus and natal Mars in Aquarius. So you obviously, this lifetime is very much to do with this process of working through your Aquarius, working through liberation, really getting get into connection with your own individuation process. So I encourage you to read the works of Carl Jung, for instance. He's very, very, he really pioneers the way and the concept of the self and how individuation actually works in that way. So with that Mars and Uranus and in Scorpio. Okay. Let's have a look. Tova, hi Tova, how are you doing? For the 80s babies, can you speak to the Mars-Uranus conjunction opposed natal Pluto and also the trine to natal Neptune? Seems like it's a major aspect affecting many of the early 80s generations. Yes, that's true. In fact, Uranus is at 29 degrees Aries, which is directly opposed my natal Pluto. And of course, Mars is also, directly opposed my natal Pluto. It is also trining my Neptune. That's correct. It is also actually aspecting. So for those of you that are born 1984, 1983, but I think the late end of 1983 and the beginning phase of 1984, you'll have Saturn in Scorpio. So this Uranus will also be opposing your natal Scorpio, your natal Saturn as well. So what is that about? Well, for me, what I'm starting to notice, or what I recognize very clearly with this generation, or this phase within generation, and this is not 100% the truth for every single person, but I definitely know what the cycle is doing. If we look at the context of, we have to look at this experience like this. Everything that is occurring in 1983 and that period of time will at some point, the year 2000 or year 2019, come into play. Okay, so there's this interconnectedness within cycles, and what I've observed with Uranus opposing Pluto, i.e. Pluto at 29 degrees Libra, Pluto at 1 degree Scorpio, Pluto at 2 degrees Scorpio, Pluto 3 degrees Scorpio, and so on. And of course, as that, Pluto goes into Scorpio, and it goes up to, even because Uranus will now be beginning to oppose everybody's Pluto that is between essentially 29 degree Libra to maybe even 10 degree Scorpio. So this opposition is absolutely taking place for you right now. And if we look at the world right now, and we look at this process of individuation that is beginning to become more available to us. I mean, this is a really, really like a huge topic of conversation, to be honest, because there's so many layers to it. And I'm just really excited to talk about it. So maybe if I just give me a moment to kind of gather my thoughts so that I can put it in something that seemingly appears coherent versus it just being all over the place. I would say that phase in the early 90s and early 80s up until maybe 1985 speaks to a specific transitionary point in which it's like my words are so limiting here to capture the essence of what's actually going on, but there's this specific space or point in which the old energy of the past that represents outdated paradigms of thinking, that represents everything that is associated with looking at an external savior and giving our power to an external savior in response or for wanting something back, and that is security and safety. So up until this point, we've been very much living in an external, like us as a collective, giving our external power away, and then that external power then establishing a way of life, and then we kind of like subscribing to that way of life and then going, okay, this is what we do. That phase to me, because what precedes this early 1983, 1982 dynamic was Uranus in Scorpio square the nodes in Aquarius and Leo, with Chiron in opposition to Aquarius, and also then squaring the nodal axis. And it was this kind of intense fracturing and acceleration of a shift from outer to inward. There we go. Simplest of sentences, a shift from outer to inward. And that phase correlates to a point of intense, like collapsing of security patterns and figures of identities that would represent old values and structures that no longer would support the evolutionary intention of 2019. So let's fast forward all the way to 2019, and we're looking at this absolute need for Pluto and Scorpios to recognize their own internal process. Okay, Pluto and Libras. I was talking to Jen about this the other day, and she's also observed it, that Pluto and Libras are a shift from outer to inward. Okay, so our attention on ourselves, and then Uranus goes into Taurus now, and it's the embodiment of this new sense of self. But it's very individual. It's very about your own authority and the rejection of external structures as a need to point out and say, this is what you should do, or this is how you need to be governed. So a resistance to outer authorities. And that period of time represented a huge transition of breaking down of energy, or should I say the energy arrives into the planet that would essentially be held by us that are embodying that change. It would be coming as a planet saying, hey, we already carry these imprints of living in a world in which we recognize our own authority and defining ourselves based on who we are. And this Neptune trine, Uranus trining the Neptune, is the acceleration of individuating our own philosophical truth that is not held collectively in a religious type of sense, but one that is individuated from, oh, this is my truth, this is my individuality, this is my journey. And it's the awakening of the inner authority in a sense. So that period of time is now we're becoming aware of that, and we will begin to see the importance of what that actually means for us in our day-to-day lives, and how this arc of growth this arc of establishing inner security and understanding our role within society and where we integrate and what our values are and what they represent and how they are contributing to an even larger cycle of evolutionary developments that goes beyond our sense of ego selves and what that means for us individually. So I hope that kind of responds to that question in a way that opens us up to something. And if that maybe helped everybody else in some way get that. Okay. All right. So peeps, there's a load of questions over here, and I'm just going to kind of get to them as best I can. All right. So me and Nissan, I've got this meeting conjunction, natal sun and Venus. Okay, so there's clearly something here for you to recognize as a huge liberation process. You must be absolutely feeling this emergent need to individuate your own sense of self and to discover yourself in completely new ways. Try new things out and be open to new experiences, as an example. Okay. Cameron, a lot of people around me have opened up their sexuality too and have now accepted it within the past week. And that's a really cool thing. And I think that will become more and more available as Uranus enters Taurus, and the recognition of the body and how much of our sexuality has been repressed through guilt and shame. And this is another thing that I think is really important to recognize, kind of flooding into the previous question around that, that transitionary phase. A lot of our collective history has been rooted in belief systems that would repress our sexuality and our own nature because of certain, Virgo type of beliefs that would say, oh, this is bad, or, the myth of Lilith and the repression of Lilith, all these types of feminine principles that have been oppressed and rejected in the masculine's approach to needing to control. All of these types of things are becoming more and more available to our awareness to be integrated in a healthy way and to be worked through. So I think this is a huge part of this healing and awakening process within our physical vessels. It's not just about I've been very, very intellectual in my expression today, but a lot of this is actually working at a biological level for ourselves. And I think acknowledging how we feel, and we're acknowledging what that feeling is for us like, and how we develop our own sense of boundaries, and we begin to create a connection between a deeper sense of self that has this journey and this personality self that wants to, in a sense, support this journey. And how do we begin to nurse and nurture and begin to connect back a physical body to a deeper self? And emotions is the gateway to that. Our feelings. And, there's been a lot of trauma, unfortunately, a lot of separation, a lot of aggression, a lot of anger with Mars, with Uranus transiting through Aries. Okay. All right. Okay, so let's see what else we've got here. All right, Crystal Star is writing, would you comment on the impact of Capricorn in our 7th house with Pluto, Saturn, and the South Node there? Well, again, this would be a good opportunity to talk to everybody, right? So in this case, Crystal's writing that she has this conjunction of Uranus, this conjunction of Pluto and Saturn and Venus and South Node all in her 7th house. Every one of us is going to have this somewhere. For me, it's all happening in my 12th house, okay? So there's a lot of culmination that's taking place within myself. There's a lot of, getting to the essence of what the history has been like for me and what my soul carries for me. So wherever you've got this conjunction in your astrology chart, if it's in the 7th house, in the 3rd house, in the 5th house, really reflect on the essence of that archetype and what that symbolizes. And then connect with those storylines that are associated with it and how that history still you carry with you. And Capricorn's all about it's grief. It's lots and lots of things that are just on your shoulders and you're like, oh, I'm carrying this with me. How can you begin to take off what you don't need to carry anymore? So if it's in the 7th house, like in Crystal's case, what are the complexes in relationships that prevent you from fully embodying your ability to be more open in a relationship? Where are there defense mechanisms that are in place that closes you down from feeling that there is a lot of unfairness or inequality or imbalance? Okay. If it's in the 1st house, as an example, you're learning how to work through this freedom. You're discovering yourself again for the first time. If it's in your 2nd house with this square of with this Uranus and Pluto, South Node, and everything in Capricorn. If it's in your 2nd house, look at the complexes around your own sense of self-worth and the abundance in your life. Look at the imprinting that came along with early life environments, mom and dad's values of abundance, as an example. Go around the natural zodiac wheel and ask yourself the question, where did my early life conditioning impact the way that I respond to this process? David, yeah, are you talking to me directly about remember to drink water, essential to take care of oneself, my friend? Yeah, it's true. I don't actually have water with me, but I definitely want to and do desire to drink water. Okay. Liddy actually has a question over here, and she's written on Facebook. Any chance that this Cancer Capricorn axis in the current transits also helps with reculminating or close the matriarchy and its distortions that preceded the patriarchy, so that we can finally grow or finally go for the shared masculine feminine leadership? That is an awesome question, and I love it. And yes, that is absolutely the transformational potential that is existing with us today. And that's probably another reason as to why I'm sitting here with my little mad hat on, invisible mad hat on, randomly talking to a screen full of people that are not really there in front of me, but they're in the Ethernet. And that's the inspiration. It's like, it's true that there is such a beautiful potential to unify Neptune in Pisces, the collective experience of what matriarchy represented to us before patriarchy and what patriarchy represented to us, and how those dynamics are still very present within our subconscious and our conscious and our collective memory. We can't be swaying from one side to another. It can't be the repression of the masculine that just is all about feminism. You can't be repressing the feminine and just being all about masculine. And these polarities will be very present to us. We do need to recognize that this is a fusing or an opportunity to actually merge together this balance of receptivity and, again, like I said, receptivity and action. And I think that that's what really, on some level, you were seeing, Cameron, was a lot of people around you opening up to their individuality and to their nature of their inner truth and what their nature is and what they feel comfortable with, without this pressure of judgment or pre-existing definitions of what you should be and shouldn't be. And if you dress like that, then you're in a category. It's like liberating from that and really living in an Aquarius type of way of individuation being an expression of the whole, through diversity, essentially. And speaking more to that, this culminative close of matriarchy and its distortions, of just, not including the masculine and its heart, and the masculine not being embracing and not afraid of the feminine principle in that sense. I mean, that's a whole beautiful discussion that maybe at some point we can actually just dedicate some time to, because that's really great. So yes, I definitely agree with that. Perhaps Uranus and Taurus may help us move, I hope, the heaviness through the body rather than store the trauma. 100%. That is exactly what I think is going to occur with Uranus and Taurus. I was actually saying that to Jen today, that with Uranus entering Taurus, I feel like we're going to go through a period in which our bodies are going to awaken, or we're going to have things awaken within ourselves that are going to point to this need for recognizing where emotions have been placed and where they need to be processed through. And so all of this stuff in Capricorn is pointing to this absolute need for healing in this area. And what is healing really? Right? Healing is, in a very simple term, it is the acknowledgement of an event or an experience that has occurred that we felt disconnected or separated from. And then what that journey is like to, in a sense, become whole again. And so this process of acceptance and acknowledgement, and then reconciliation, rehabilitation. And I think every single one of us right now is going through a process of rehabilitation on some level. We're rehabilitating something of ourselves that was shunned away or repressed, or we couldn't, like for instance, with myself, with Venus square the nodes as an example, early life imprinting, we all do this. All of us have got this on some level, where we looked at reality and said, okay, I need to survive. And this situation represents a situation where doing or acting this way will ensure my safety as a child, right? As the age of 3 or 2 or 5, etc. We get to the age of 30 and we start attracting certain experiences into our lives, and we respond from that space, and that limits our capacity to fully live in the moment, or to be our authentic self, or to be our truth, because of those certain false selves that we've had to embody at a different point in time. So this is again another pointing to this Uranus and Taurus process, and Uranus and Aries pointing to this need to liberate from certain conditionings that prevent us from actually accessing what we're about to experience with Chiron moving into Aries and the healing process associated with this. Okay. So firstly, guys, I'm super sorry if I wasn't able to get to everybody's questions. I'm definitely going to move through them and just kind of look there. Iris, you're saying, what does Mars conjunct Uranus in the 7th house mean for me moving into the 8th house in Taurus soon? Again, I can't really speak to it specifically because I don't know where your Pluto is, and I don't know what other archetypes are happening in your chart. I suppose I can guess to a certain degree where Pluto is sitting in your chart. In Libra, so probably the 4th house or the 5th house. But if it's about 7th house, it has to do with, again, the conversation with Crystal, where this is the arena of life that is associated with a new way of being, a new way of relating, a new space. How are you talking? How are you experiencing being embraced versus isolated? Where are there certain and memories within your own cycle of life where relationships have been traumatic for you, and how have you responded to relationships from that space, and how has this Uranus through the 7th house really opened you up to experiencing a completely different way of embracing relationships, and how have you maybe become a spokesperson for relating to people in this new accelerated Uranus way. Like I said, with my Uranus entering my 3rd house from 2012 to 2017 or 2019, it opened up this whole entire realm of communication from a different perspective. Nightcats, I'm Pluto and Scorpio generation conjunct Jupiter. I hope I find my way someday. I believe that everybody's going to find their way some way. It's just, it depends on the nature of what that path is about. And as long as you keep, I really encourage you to have an astrology reading with somebody that allows you to connect with that essence and spend some time meditating with the essence of what you feel your chart is, you know. Pluto and Scorpios are all about how can I understand it myself. So that's, again, this transition from, oh, I need this outer authority or guru to tell me what to do, versus, okay, I'm learning more about myself. I'm learning more about myself. I'm recognizing more about myself. I'm connecting more with my body. I'm connecting more with my body. Okay, I'm becoming more aware of this inner authority that governs my choices in life and how I can navigate from that place. Okay, so Pluto in the 4th house, right? So you're learning a lot about emotional inner security with the 7th house. So Cameron, embodying the truth that is outside of social norm, electromagnetic energy, being in the body completely. Okay. Okay, so let's check the stream one more time for that. Okay, so I wanted to let everybody know, for anybody that is living in Scandinavia, and I'll get it right now. Bear with me for a second. So I want to point to two things quickly. One, and I'm going to put it in the chat. Okay, there it is. Okay. So for anybody that is living in Scandinavia, which is, you know, Norway, or that is, you know, feels as if there is a desire to want to go onto a retreat, there is a retreat that is being held called Turning Point. And this is being held in Stockholm in Sweden, and Jen is co-hosting this event. So Raising Vibrations and Jen will be hosting this Turning Point retreat happening on the 22nd of March to the 24th of March this year, of course. And for anybody that is in this area or has the capacity to travel to Sweden and join this retreat, I've actually put a link in the chat box, and I will be putting a link in the description as well as the comments of what this retreat is. And so there's loads and loads of information there about what it's going to be about. It's a lot of human design, a lot of astrology. It's a very healing orientated experience. I've watched them actually put this whole thing together, and I've really been excited for them because, you know, there's three ladies that are going to be holding this event, and I really just saw the passion and excitement that they're actually putting into this. So if this is something that is available to you or you would like to do, I really encourage you to check it out. There's only like 12 spaces, and so there is a link in the chat right now to go and check it out and read about it. And so yeah, I think that's it. And then of course, just to remind you, on the 16th and 17th, which is this Saturday and Sunday, there is a free introduction to evolutionary astrology course that I'll be holding. And if you're living in Australia or New Zealand, there will be a time that is suitable for you. So I'll be hosting one in the morning, my morning, which will be your afternoon. And then I'll be hosting one in the evening, my evening, for everybody that's in the States and on the western part of the world. And I will also be putting a link in the description to sign up for that as well. Okay. So there's one question somebody wrote: how did you handle this energy? And well, I personally have watched myself go into a whole different million directions. That's why I felt like, well, we felt that we needed to do this live stream. And so it's been very fractured, and you've really needed to breathe. We've really needed to breathe. I think there was a lot of exhaustion, especially for Jen last week, and still right now, because there's just so many things going on, so many multiple experiences and dimensions of reality just being present with us. So I encourage you to engage with a lot of water. I encourage you to breathe, do some breathing exercises, a lot of meditation, etc., to calm your electrical system down, calm your electrical system down, calm your electrical system down, and just kind of breathe through this experience, okay? So that's my 2 cents to how to handle this energy at this point in time. And reflection on what arises, Okay. So thanks very much, everybody. I appreciate your time and attention for this. And if you really enjoyed this, of course, just share it and, you know, give it a like, etc. And what else? There's not much else. So thanks very much, everybody. I appreciate, like I said, your time, and I'll be signing off right now. Okay. So take care, everybody. Bye-bye.